Level 1. Fleeting worry. It usually starts small. A tiny thought passing through your mind like a notification you didn't ask for. Maybe it's something simple. You send a message and the person doesn't reply. You check your bag before leaving the house, not once, but twice, just to be sure your keys are actually in there. You hear your name in a conversation, and for a second you wonder, was that about me? These moments aren't dramatic. They don't stop your day. But they stick to the edges of your mind like little pieces of lint you can't quite brush off. Most people shrug them off and move on. But if you live with anxiety, they linger longer than they should. A tiny what if? A quick did I mess that up? A flash of should I check again? This first layer of anxiety is easy to miss because it masquerades as normal human caution. And honestly, it is normal until it isn't. The worry doesn't feel catastrophic, just extra. A few seconds of tension that don't match the situation. A short internal debate that nobody else hears. If you've ever found yourself replaying something small for no real reason, welcome to level 1. It's the beginning. The place where anxiety quietly enters the room without announcing itself. Not harmful, not life-changing, just a whisper. But whispers have a tendency to grow louder if you listen long enough. Level 2. Persistent overthinking. This is where the whisper becomes an echo. You know that moment when something small happens. A comment, a look, a tiny mistake. And your brain refuses to let it go? Maybe you said something slightly awkward during a conversation. Most people would forget it in 5 minutes. But you? You replay it like a scene from a movie you didn't even enjoy. The tone of your voice, the expression on their face, the pause after you spoke. Every tiny detail becomes evidence for a crime you're convinced you committed, even though you didn't. This is the level where your mind starts building stories. Someone doesn't text back? They must be upset. A plan changes? You must have done something wrong. You feel a small pain? Google suddenly becomes your worst enemy. You try to logic your way out, but the thoughts keep looping. Not because you want them to, but because anxiety has decided to create a highlight reel of everything that could go wrong. And here's the thing. You know it's irrational. You know you're overthinking, but knowing doesn't stop it. It's like trying to turn off a fan that keeps spinning even after the switch is off. The momentum doesn't stop instantly. If you've ever sat quietly in your room, replaying a harmless moment from days or even years ago, if you've ever constructed entire conversations in your head that never actually happened, if you've ever asked yourself, why can't I just stop thinking about this? Then you've been here. Level 2. Where anxiety stops being a visitor and starts renting space in your mind. Level 3. Social anxiety. This is the level where anxiety stops living inside your mind and starts following you into the world. It shows up quietly, right before you walk into a room, join a call, or speak to someone new. Your heart beats a little faster, your palms warm up, and suddenly something as simple as saying, hi, feels like stepping onto a stage you never auditioned for. Maybe you've been here before. You walk into a gathering, and the first thing you think is, where do I stand so I don't look weird? You rehearse your order in your head before talking to the barista. You practice your introduction before an online meeting, and still feel like you said it wrong. You over-prepare small talk because silence feels dangerous. And the whole time, you're watching yourself from the outside. Judging, correcting, adjusting. Not because you want to, but because you're scared of being misunderstood, judged, or simply noticed too closely. What makes this level tricky is that it hides behind personality. People might say, you're just shy or you're quiet, but they don't see the internal storm happening underneath the calm surface. They don't see the mental gymnastics, calculating every gesture, every word, every reaction. And when the interaction is finally over, you replay it again. Not to cherish it, but to critique it. If you've ever walked away from a conversation and immediately thought, did I sound stupid? Or felt exhausted after socializing. Not because of people, but because of your own thoughts. Then you know this level well. Level 3, where every interaction feels like a test you're afraid to fail. Level 4, avoidance anxiety. This is the level where your world quietly starts shrinking. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just one small decision at a time. You tell yourself you'll answer that message later, and later never comes. You put off booking that appointment because today's too busy. You avoid a conversation because you're scared of how it might go. You skip a social event because you don't feel up to it, even though a part of you wishes you could go. Avoidance doesn't look like running away. It looks like delaying, rescheduling, changing plans, finding excuses that sound reasonable, even to yourself. But under all those excuses sits one quiet fear. What if I can't handle it? This level of anxiety convinces you that the safest option is not doing anything at all. And for a moment, avoidance feels like relief, like exhaling after holding your breath too long. But the relief doesn't last, because every time you avoid something, the anxiety grows stronger. The task feels bigger. The conversation feels heavier. The world feels slightly more overwhelming. Days turn into weeks, and responsibilities start piling up like unopened messages you're scared to read. You start avoiding the things you used to enjoy too. Not because you don't want them, but because even good things now feel like too much. If you've ever stared at your phone as it rang and thought, I can't do this right now. If you've ever left something undone until it became embarrassing to return to, then you've been here. Level 4, where anxiety slowly replaces action with avoidance and convinces you it's protection. Level 5, generalized anxiety. This is the level where anxiety stops attaching itself to specific moments and starts attaching itself to everything. At this stage, your worry has no single trigger. It's not a conversation or a message or a meeting. It's the morning itself. You wake up with an unexplained tightness in your chest, like your body remembered something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. Simple tasks feel heavier than they should. Planning your day feels overwhelming. Even things that are supposed to be enjoyable, a day off, a small outing, a break, come with a quiet sense of unease you can't trace. This is the level where your mind constantly searches for danger that isn't there. You worry about the future even when nothing is wrong. You imagine worst-case scenarios without meaning to. You're tired, but your brain won't stop scanning, checking, preparing. And the most exhausting part? You feel anxious about feeling anxious. It becomes a cycle. The worry creates tension, the tension creates more worry, and the loop keeps spinning until even resting feels like work. People around you might not notice anything unusual. You function, you show up, you get things done. But inside there's a constant hum, a background noise of what if that never fully shuts off. If you've ever felt uneasy for no identifiable reason, if your mind jumps to negative possibilities even on calm days, if you're mentally tired even after doing nothing, then you've crossed into level 5, where anxiety becomes a steady presence. Not loud, not dramatic, just always there. Level 6, panic level anxiety. This is the level where anxiety stops being a thought and becomes a physical event. It doesn't always give you a warning. Sometimes it hits during a stressful moment. Other times it arrives on an ordinary day when you're doing something as simple as getting ready for work or lying in bed. It starts subtly, a flutter in your chest, a strange tightness in your throat, a breath that suddenly feels too shallow. Your mind tries to explain it. Maybe I'm tired, maybe I'm hungry, maybe it's nothing. But your body has already pressed the alarm button. Your heart races, your hands shake, your breathing turns sharp and fast. The room feels smaller. Your thoughts scatter in every direction at once. And then the scariest part hits, the thought that something is terribly wrong. Some people fear they're about to faint. Others think they're having a heart attack. Some feel like they're losing control of their own mind. It's not nerves. It's not stress. It's your body flooding itself with fear, even when there's no danger in sight. And when it finally ends, you're left exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. Because now there's a new fear. What if it happens again? So you start avoiding places where it happened, people who were around, situations that remind you of it, not out of preference, but out of survival. If you've ever had a moment where your body panicked before your mind understood why, where you felt fear without reason, where you thought you were losing control, then you've reached level 6, the level where anxiety stops whispering and starts screaming. Level 7, the anxious self. This is the level where anxiety stops being something you experience and becomes something you start to identify with. It's not a moment or a day or even a week. It's a phase where you look back and realize anxiety has quietly woven itself into who you think you are. At this level, you don't just worry, you anticipate worry. You don't just fear situations, you fear your reaction to them. You start choosing your clothes, your words, your plans, even your dreams based on what feels safe. Not because you want to limit yourself, but because you don't remember what it feels like to live without calculating everything. You're hyper-aware of your heart, your thoughts, your breath. You scan rooms, you scan people, you scan yourself. Not to judge, but to survive emotions you've spent years trying to outrun. And maybe the saddest part? You start believing this is your personality. Maybe I'm just like this. Maybe I'm not built for big things. Maybe I'm too sensitive, too fragile, too much. But here's the truth. Something that's hard to believe when you're at this level. Anxiety doesn't erase who you are, it only covers it. There is a version of you who existed before all of this. Someone brave, curious, spontaneous, hopeful, and that person didn't disappear. They're just buried under layers you never chose. If you've ever looked in the mirror and thought, I don't even know who I'd be without this constant fear, then you've reached level 7, where anxiety becomes the lens you see your life through, even though it was never meant to define you. If you liked the video, watch these as well, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next.